The door had no hinges, just a welded seam rusted into silence beneath 60 years of soil and salt. When the restoration crew at the old RAF listening post near Beachy Head broke through, the air that escaped smelled of burned plastic and machine oil, the ghosts of a time sealed away since the Cold War. Inside, the flashlights caught the edge of a sign. Operation Mercury, Restricted Section C. Stacked reels, labelled in fading stenciled ink, lay collapsed beside magnetic coils and stripped-out communication racks. Someone had cut the power cables clean. The deeper they went, the clearer it became. This wasn't a radar room. It was something else, something meant never to be found. Chapter 1. The Forgotten Vaults of Operation Mercury. The first official record of the Beachy Head radar site appears in a Ministry of Defence infrastructure report dated 1954, reference file AIR 21-947B. It lists the facility as a temporary experimental receiver outpost, decommissioned 2 years later. For decades, it was ignored by historians, one of hundreds of post-war British radar stations that flickered to life and then disappeared into the bureaucracy. But in March 2021, a subcontracted engineering team from Sussex Utility Restorations uncovered a sealed corridor behind the main generator hall. The entry was fused by an industrial weld that none of the site's blueprints accounted for. Within 3 days, they had contacted the MOD Heritage Division, assuming it was a forgotten storage vault. What they had stumbled upon was a chamber whose existence had been erased from every official archive. The excavation was recorded on high-definition cameras. The footage, reviewed months later by investigative journalist Catherine Holt, shows the crew lowering portable lights through the breach. The first chamber was dry, preserved by layers of lead sheeting and airtight seals. A corroded sign read, Section C, Mercury Operations, Authorized Personnel Only. The floor was scattered with degraded reels of magnetic tape, early 1950s stock. Against the far wall, 3 consoles were bolted in place, their dials labelled in military shorthand, MagFrec 01, Echo FLD 03, and an unlabelled unit with a frequency dial extending beyond the standard broadcast range. Holt noted that the console surfaces had been deliberately scored with deep knife marks, as if someone tried to destroy identifiers before abandoning the site. When the MOD inspection team arrived 2 weeks later, they seized all physical evidence and restricted the footage under the Official Secrets Act. But one of the subcontractors, electrical engineer Stephen Garvey, had already uploaded backup video to a private cloud. Holt, through contacts at the British Library Sound Archive, cross-referenced the date range of the tapes with known intelligence projects. The closest match was Operation Mercury, a classified joint communications experiment involving the Royal Air Force and the US Air Research and Development Command. Until then, Mercury had been a footnote in a handful of redacted memoranda, described vaguely as electromagnetic countermeasures field testing. Yet the reels recovered at Beachy Head suggested something more than countermeasures. They contained recorded frequency sweeps, punctuated by faint, rhythmic tones resembling human speech. A declassified American Air Technical Intelligence memo, dated April 1959, ATIA 14512, references behavioral modulation anomalies recorded at British receiver stations along the Channel. It mentions neuro-auditory responses at distance exceeding instrumentation expectations. Holt contacted Dr. Malcolm Rains, a retired acoustic physicist who had once been seconded to the RAF's telecommunications research establishment. He recalled the rumours. We were told they were testing new forms of radar shielding, but everyone knew Mercury wasn't about radar. It was about influence, finding ways to transmit not just sound, but intent. Rains said that after 1959, the entire research division associated with the project was dissolved, and the personnel reassigned or quietly retired under medical cover. Further analysis of the recovered materials revealed inconsistencies that hinted at field tests conducted near civilian populations. Among the fragments of paper preserved in sealed boxes, one letterhead stood out: Royal Engineers, Project Coordination, Cuckmere Sector. The Cuckmere Valley village of Exeat, located less than 10 kilometers inland, saw a sudden population displacement in early 1960. The National Archives list its evacuation as a result of unstable terrain and flooding. Yet no environmental records confirm flooding that year. Holt located aerial reconnaissance photographs from the same period showing the village intact, though shortly afterward, it vanishes from civil registries. Cross-referencing the site's coordinates with MOD property transfers revealed that Exeat was absorbed into a private ministry estate under a different codename, Site R4. By mid-2022, Holt had compiled enough documentation to publish a preliminary report. Before the release, however, she received a notice from the MOD Security Service requesting an interview concerning unauthorized possession of restricted media. When she complied, her notes and digital drives were confiscated. What remains of her investigation is pieced together from colleagues' archives and recovered metadata. Among those fragments is an audio file labeled Merc Reel 0237B Wave, digitized from a degraded magnetic reel. The recording begins with standard calibration tones before descending into a low oscillation. Then faintly, a man's voice. Field test commenced. Subject group, Exeat perimeter, active. The remainder is unintelligible static punctuated by intermittent human murmurs. Acoustic analysis confirms modulated frequencies extending into infrasonic ranges, consistent with experiments designed to induce psychological or physiological effects. An internal MOD review, released under parliamentary pressure in 2024, acknowledged the discovery of the Beachy Head Annex, but dismissed public concern as misinterpretation of incomplete historical data. Still, the report's appendix, Item 14C, contains a peculiar redaction. The blacked-out lines follow a reference to neurological exposure studies, with one surviving phrase visible: subsequent relocation of test populace. When Holt's associate confronted the MOD press office with these findings, the response was curt. Those files no longer exist. The tone of finality did little to quell speculation that Mercury represented an early attempt at directed frequency behavior control. A retired communications technician, who requested anonymity, provided what may be the last surviving first-hand testimony. He had served at the Cuckmere Relay in 1958 and remembered black trucks with American plates arriving unannounced. "They told us to clear the floor," he said. "We heard the generators spin up to power levels we'd never used before." After that night, half the crew were reassigned. He kept one souvenir, a copper data plate reading Mercury Control Unit 3. Laboratory analysis later confirmed the alloy composition matched American-manufactured signal chassis from the late 1950s, never used in domestic radar installations. By late 2024, Holt's findings reached a global audience when leaked fragments appeared on independent investigative platforms. Public reaction was swift but short-lived. The story was buried beneath official denials. Yet for a few days, the world glimpsed a possible truth hidden behind decades of classified silence: that the British coast once hosted an experiment designed to manipulate thought through engineered frequencies. What began as a forgotten radar vault had become a tomb for an idea too dangerous to document. The site has since been resealed under MOD authority, its location fenced and monitored. Officially, it is part of a heritage hazard containment zone. Unofficially, the welders who closed the new steel plates swear they heard faint humming from within, a low tone that pulsed in rhythm with the tide, as if the machinery beneath the earth had never truly stopped. Chapter 2: The Siberian Archives of Project Tantalus. The snow in Norilsk never truly melts. It folds into itself, ice compacted over decades of industry and neglect. In 2019, a geological team working under the Russian Academy of Sciences was drilling soil cores near a disused nickel mine at coordinates 69°1N, 88°13E, when their bore struck metal at a depth of 24 meters. They expected post-war debris, perhaps remnants of abandoned Soviet infrastructure. What they exhumed instead were 3 steel containers marked with the faded hammer and sickle insignia and the stenciled designation NKVD Tech Sector 1947. Each crate bore identical serial tags, TNLS-01. When opened under controlled conditions at the Krasnoyarsk Regional Laboratory, the contents stunned the inspection team. Blueprints for an aircraft-sized drone, type labeled Tantalus Vehicle, dated September 1947, and signed by Colonel Mikhail Petrovich Sidorov, chief of the NKVD Experimental Aviation Bureau. The discovery was immediately classified under the Federal Security Service, but one of the engineers, Pavel Denikin, leaked digital photographs of the documents before they were seized. The images surfaced briefly on an encrypted research forum frequented by aviation historians. They showed detailed engineering diagrams resembling a hybrid between the German V-2 rocket and a modern autonomous aircraft, wings short and swept, fuselage streamlined, with an internal payload bay labeled aerosol compartment. A separate folder contained log entries typed on yellowing paper, stamped Tantal field trial reports. One report, dated February 12, 1948, references the use of biochem payload dispersal trials over a test site identified only as Sector 14. The coordinates correspond to an uninhabited area north of the Yenisei River, officially listed as a mining exclusion zone until 1991. Independent historian Dr. Lena Volkova traced the origins of Project Tantalus through fragmented Soviet industrial registries. The project appeared to have been conceived during the immediate post-war period, when the Soviet Union absorbed numerous German scientists through Operation Osuaviakim. Among the transferred personnel was engineer Friedrich Weiss, formerly attached to Peenemunde's propulsion division. His name appears in a declassified East German intelligence memorandum, MFS AV 5112-47, referencing flight automation prototypes. According to Volkova, Weiss was relocated to Norilsk under a civilian alias and disappeared from public record in 1951. The Norilsk discovery contained several documents signed by F. Weiss, confirming his participation in Tantalus's design. Phase analysis of the recovered schematics suggested the drone was intended for autonomous low-altitude deployment, powered by a modified kerosene turbine engine with primitive gyroscopic navigation. What set Tantalus apart was its payload description: chemical dissemination via thermobaric aerosol. The language, though ambiguous, implied a system capable of spreading experimental agents across large areas, possibly for weather modification, possibly for warfare. A KGB memorandum from 1953, Code 9247L, hints at unexpected collateral losses during demonstration flights. The memo was stamped with a red erase directive, a bureaucratic term used when entire projects were to be removed from institutional memory. Within 6 months, all references to Tantalus vanished from official defense records. In 2020, Volkova and her research partner, investigative journalist Kirill Arsenyev, traveled to the supposed Sector 14 test site using archived Soviet topographic maps. What they found was unsettling. The region had been sealed by an FSB perimeter, citing radioactive hazard. Yet Geiger readings taken by the team showed minimal radiation, just traces of heavy metals in the soil consistent with industrial contamination. Beneath permafrost layers, ground-penetrating radar detected large metallic fragments aligned in a linear pattern, resembling wreckage. Arsenyev recorded the expedition with thermal cameras. On the second day, they discovered the remains of a metallic fuselage, half buried in ice. Engraved along one panel were letters barely visible beneath corrosion: TNLS-04. Inside the cockpit cavity lay twisted control assemblies, and embedded in the wiring harness, a small metal tag stamped Weiss F, 1948. The find was enough to trigger a full investigation by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Volkova's footage was confiscated upon return to Krasnoyarsk, and both she and Arsenyev were summoned for questioning under suspicion of violating state secrecy laws. However, a copy of their field recordings survived via encrypted transfer to a Western academic server. The recovered audio, authenticated by forensic analysis, captured a faint mechanical hum emanating from the wreckage, possibly residual magnetism, possibly interference from underground currents. More haunting was a brief exchange recorded during excavation, Arsenyev whispering, "It's not a bomb," followed by Volkova's reply, "Then what did they test here?" In late 2021, new information emerged from declassified post-Soviet archives. A document from the Committee for State Security KGB titled Post-Tantalus Evaluation, 1962, referenced failure due to instability of control systems leading to dispersal accident near populated sector. The same year, the mining settlement of Kayakan reported an unexplainable illness outbreak, records of which were removed from regional medical databases in the 1970s. Population loss for that quarter exceeded 20%, officially attributed to industrial exposure. The KGB file concluded, subject terminated. Personnel reassigned to Vega Division. Historians later identified Project Vega as a Soviet atmospheric research unit responsible for high-altitude aerosol studies. an apparent rebranding of Tantalus under civilian cover. By 2023, remnants of the recovered Tantalus documents were quietly leaked to the international research community through an anonymous upload labeled SIB archive. The upload contained scanned schematics with notes in both German and Russian, annotated with chilling precision. Range 400 km, dispersal radius 10 km, objective autonomy. A separate log page listed the materials required for payload mixture, including ethylene oxide, phenol, and a compound designated only as BX47. Toxicologists reviewing the list confirmed that the combination would produce a highly unstable nerve agent with a persistence level exceeding known wartime formulations. Arseniev, now living in exile, recounted the final day of their expedition during an interview in Prague. "We were told not to dig deeper," he said, "but we found a second chamber, sealed, just beyond the wreckage. The Geiger counter went wild, not for radiation, but electromagnetic flux. There were bones inside, at least 6 bodies, military uniforms, no insignia." When asked if they had retrieved evidence, he paused. The next morning, the entire pit was filled in by a government team. They said it was for safety. Today, the Norilsk site remains under federal control, designated Industrial Containment Zone 112K. Official statements dismiss reports of biological experimentation, claiming Tantalus was an early drone navigation study. But satellite images from 2024 reveal fresh excavation scars consistent with renewed digging. Locals report low-frequency vibrations at night and faint lights beneath the snow where no facility is marked. Volkova vanished from public contact shortly after attempting to publish her findings. Her last encrypted message, recovered from a secure server, contained a single line of text. They never buried it. They just froze it. The story of Project Tantalus is not one of technology, but of memory, of a state willing to erase its past by burying it beneath permafrost. The documents retrieved from the Siberian archives show a regime obsessed with control, a mirror of the post-war paranoia that consumed both superpowers. Whether the Tantalus prototypes ever flew beyond the test range remains unknown, but deep in the ice, where machines and men are indistinguishable in decay, the echoes of that forgotten ambition still hum through frozen metal, a mechanical heartbeat in a graveyard built for secrets. Chapter 3. The Vanished Files of Operation Ashfall. In the National Archives' temperature-controlled vaults, tucked inside a neglected steel cabinet labeled AV, MISC 1950-53, a reel-to-reel film canister surfaced in late 2023. Its handwritten tag read only OP Ashfall, 1952. Archivist technician Daniel Kerr, conducting routine cataloging for a digitization initiative, fed the brittle film into a transfer scanner expecting training footage. Instead, the first frames revealed aerial shots of desert scrub and chain-link fences, an arid nowhere later identified as Groom Range, Nevada. Overlaid was a blurred title slate, Psychological Field Division, Joint Task Group 9C, Operation Ashfall. The footage, running 13 minutes, depicted something wholly absent from Cold War records. Rows of underground chambers illuminated by harsh fluorescence, scientists in protective masks, and a test platform marked with a chemical hazard insignia. Audio, restored from magnetic sync track, contained clipped voices. Test 4. Auditory cycle engaged. Kerr reported the anomaly. Within 48 hours, federal agents removed the canister. A replacement copy was left behind, blank, its label newly printed. Through Freedom of Information Act requests, investigative journalist Noah Fenn obtained partially declassified microfilm reels from Air Force Intelligence. Archives cross-referenced under Project 50SVNA, Behavioral Materials Division. Among the blurred documents were references to psychoacoustics, payloads, and propellant-controlled atmospheric dispersion. These terms aligned uncannily with the imagery seen on the confiscated film. Declassified project rosters listed scientific consultants from RAND Corporation and the Air Research and Development Command, alongside German immigré chemist Dr. Gerhard Lenz, whose wartime research involved psychopharmacological gas inhalants. A memo from November 1952, originating from the Office of Scientific Intelligence, describes Ashfall as a cooperative experimental platform for atmospheric behavioral modulation. In less clinical language, weaponized influence through airborne chemicals and sound, the facility beneath. Groom Range was constructed under a false designation, Project Sundial. documented as an environmental resilience test site. According to excavation maps, its tunnels extended 7 levels deep, each floor assigned to a different division. Level 3, Cognitive Response Trials, contain sealed observation pods linked to soundproof control rooms. Surviving personnel records name only 2 confirmed engineers: Captain Henry Lowell, acoustics specialist, and civilian contractor Dr. Nora Keane, chemical biologist. Both vanished from employment records after February 1953. In 1977, a Senate Intelligence Committee briefly mentioned an early behavioral test incident at Groom Range, but transcripts were classified before publication. That single line, buried in Appendix B, now serves as the only official acknowledgement that ashfall ever existed. Chapter 4. The Lost Convoy of the Arctic Route. The sonar sweep began as routine, a subsea mapping operation commissioned by an energy consortium to chart a proposed gas pipeline across the Barents Sea. On March 11, 2020, at grid coordinates 73°42'N, 31°11'E, the research vessel Helix Nordica detected an irregular mass 300 meters below the surface. The echo returns suggested a dense cluster of metallic debris, ship-sized, layered like a graveyard. When remotely operated vehicle footage streamed back to the bridge, the outlines became clear. Twisted hulls of cargo freighters, their skeletal remains lined across the seabed as though they'd fallen in formation. The lead vessel bore an inscription in eroded white paint, RS-46, yet no Allied naval registry contained such a convoy. The discovery initiated one of the most contentious maritime investigations in recent history, uncovering evidence of a wartime operation so secret that even its existence had been erased. Marine archaeologist Dr. Helena Ostgaard, based in Tromsø, led the initial dives under Norwegian Maritime Authority oversight. She documented 8 ships within a 2-kilometer radius, each appearing intact before catastrophic structural failure. Curiously, none showed signs of direct combat damage. No torpedo holes, no shell scoring, no burn residue typical of U-boat attacks. Inside one partially collapsed hull, divers located sealed cylindrical containers stacked beneath decayed canvas tarps. Each bore stenciled codes beginning MHP, followed by numeric identifiers, and the faded stamp Manhattan Priority. Radiation sensors detected elevated readings near the cargo holds, though not at levels consistent with weaponized material. The containers were hoisted to the surface under strict containment, later transferred to a joint Norwegian-British analysis lab at Harwell. Chapter 5. The Silent City Beneath Dresden. The construction crew thought they had struck an old sewer line. It was March 2024, and the city of Dresden was extending its U-Bahn network under the southern Altstadt district, an area devastated during World War II and rebuilt layer by layer atop its ruins. The drill head halted against reinforced concrete, thicker, denser than post-war infrastructure. After 2 hours of coring and chemical analysis, engineers confirmed the structure predated modern foundations by at least 70 years. When the Municipal Archaeological Authority authorized entry, workers descended through the breach into a hollow void, air-stale, metallic, and unmoving. Their helmet cameras captured the first glimpse, an underground corridor lined with steel doors, each marked with serial designations and the Reichsadler emblem. Stenciled along the walls in Gothic script, Reichsforschungsamt, Abteilung Morgenlicht. Within weeks, the discovery would ignite one of the most disturbing historical investigations in modern German history. The initial descent team recovered boxes of optical instruments, lenses, prisms, and calibrated mirrors coated in residue. The devices were packed with obsessive precision, labeled with experiment numbers ranging from 43 ML101 to 43 ML287. The date range placed them in early 1945, when the Third Reich was collapsing. At the end of the main corridor, investigators encountered an airlocked steel door still connected to an independent power source. Behind it lay a laboratory preserved by vacuum seals. Tables were set with notebooks and glass vials, as though the occupants had simply stepped out mid-shift. The wall bore a single phrase in chalk, written hastily. Morgenlicht bleibt bestehen. Morgenlicht remains. Archived OSS intercepts from the same year, previously dismissed as propaganda, referred to Project Morgenlicht, translated as Morning Light, declassified under US National Archives tag RG2267412. The files describe an experimental optical weapon intended to produce concentrated blinding light for anti-aircraft defense. but newly recovered materials from the Dresden site indicated a far more complex agenda. Among the papers were references to retinal adaptation trials and subject endurance parameters, implying human experimentation. Handwritten logs attributed to Dr. Hans Keller, formerly attached to the Reichsforschungsamt's Photonics division, described tests conducted on uncooperative prisoners subjected to sustained infrared exposure. One note dated February 13, 1945, the night Dresden burned, reads, "Evacuation ordered. Maintain equipment integrity. Data to be transferred south." Yet no evidence suggests the team ever escaped. The facility's ventilation system had been deliberately sealed, its elevators welded shut. In April 2024, forensic teams from the Technische Universität Dresden began systematic excavation. They uncovered a secondary chamber containing 6 skeletal remains positioned around a central generator unit. Radiation analysis revealed elevated photonic residues consistent with high-energy xenon arc emissions, a technology decades ahead of known wartime optics. Chemical analysis of nearby surfaces identified traces of silver nitrate and lanthanum oxide, both used in advanced optical coatings. One notebook, its pages waterlogged but legible, contained sketches of rotating mirrors and energy concentrators linked to an array labeled Helios Array Mech 2. The diagrams resembled primitive laser amplification systems, predating any known operational laser by 15 years. If authentic, it suggested the Reich had achieved a breakthrough that never reached the surface.